Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to rise and join debate on Bill 205, the Election Finance and Contribution Disclosure Third-Party Advertising Amendment Act 2009. Mr. Chairman, this bill is about enhancing and providing clarity and openness and accountability to freedom of speech. Bill 205 would provide regulation for third-party advertising during provincial elections. It would do so by requiring that funds used for election advertising originate from a political advertising account registered to a third-party sponsor, and that this account be registered with the Chief Electoral Officer. In addition, Bill 205 clarifies the definition of third-party sponsor, eligible donor, advertising, and political advertising. This is an important piece of legislation that needs to be examined with due diligence. Mr. Chairman, I find Section 39.5 subsections 1 and 2 particularly interesting and would like to further explore the meaning of this section. Section 39.5 deals with the identification of third parties on electoral advertising and reads that every advertisement that is the subject of a third-party election advertising expense must contain the name of the third party that sponsors advertising as registered with the Chief Electoral Officer and indicate that the third party authorizes the advertisement. Subsection 2. The Chief Electoral Officer may establish rules for the content of notices in advertisements under subsection 1. In essence, this section states that third-party election advertising is subject to rules. Currently, political parties are subject to rules as well regarding advertising disclosure, while third parties are not. The public deserves to know who is placing election advertisements and who is trying to influence their vote. To fully understand Section 39.5, I must take a moment and reference back to Section 39.1, subsection 1c, which defines third-party advertising. It is defined as political advertising that appears during an election period and is placed by a third party. Mr. Chairman, the first word in Section 39.5, subsection 1 is every. Every advertisement by a third party is subject to the rules stated in this subsection. It's important that rules are applied across all forms of advertising and that certain mediums are not exempt from these rules. Each of these advertisements are as stated, must contain who is sponsoring the advertisement. Mr. Chairman, this is central for the sake of transparency and for knowing exactly who is behind the advertising. Additionally, the names appearing on the advertisement must be as registered with the Chief Electoral Officer. This is essential as groups may go by several names or may join forces with others for the sake of election advertising. It must be clear who is authorizing the advertisement by using registered. It can be assured that the appropriate paperwork has been filed with the Chief Electoral Officer. Section 39.5 subsection 1 strengthens the overall meaning of Bill 205. In addition, Mr. Chairman, subsection 2 of Section 39.5 is an important line in this legislation. Firstly, I must note that the Chief Electoral Officer is the main component of this subsection. This subsection establishes that it is as Chief Electoral Officer, also known as the CEO, that establishes rules regarding third-party advertising, therefore avoiding political interference. It is established that the CEO may establish rules. By including the word may, it gives him or her the ability, as they see appropriate, to establish rules for what is suitable in advertisements and required for third-party identification. Furthermore, by including established rules for the content of the notices, it is clear as to what the rules are being established for. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, Section 39.5 allows for there to be a more level playing field with third-party groups when they advertise during elections. And by establishing rules, it is clear as to who is doing the advertising. Together, subsection 1 and 2 of Section 39.5 are integral to this bill. It is clear and concise wording, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Ultimately, Bill 205 will provide for greater transparency within the election process. Mr. Chairman, at the end of the day, the goal here is to get everybody involved in the democratic movement, in advocating for issues that are important to them. All we're asking for here is for everybody to declare who they are and what they're advertising and campaigning for. Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the honourable member from Airdrie-Chestermere for bringing forward this bill that has fostered an interesting debate and discussion. I look forward to further debate on Bill 205, the Election Finance and Contribution Disclosure Third-Party Advertising Amendment Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.